I'm Cliff Barrickman, and I am in Kokkinok, Alaska, on the shores of Lake Iliamna, Alaska's largest lake. In some places, this lake is over 1,000 feet deep. There's no telling what could be swimming around in the bottom of this lake.
It's so deep. It's at least 1,200 feet, but nobody knows. Nobody's taken a rock tied to a string and dropped it down to the bottom.
80 years of sightings, destroyed fishing gear, $100,000 unclaimed reward, multiple credible witnesses, and at least one professional marine ecologist who went in a skeptic and came out a believer. And we still do not know what is in this lake. That's not a dramatic pause. That is the actual situation. Something large is living in a remote Alaskan lake. The best scientific theory for what it is involves a creature that can weigh 4 tons and potentially live for centuries, and nobody has been able to prove it yet. That's not a mystery that's been solved. That's a mystery that's actively getting more interesting and more unsettling every single year. The lake nobody talks about. Before we get into the creature, and we absolutely will, we need to talk about the body of water itself, because Lake Iliamna is not some atmospheric, moody little Scottish loch. This is a serious body of water that deserves to be taken seriously. Lake Iliamna is the largest lake in Alaska and the third largest freshwater lake in the United States. It is 77 miles long, 22 miles wide, and in some areas approaches 1,000 feet in depth. Its surface area is over 1,000 square miles. Scientists have described it as an inland sea, and they mean that descriptively, not poetically. And here is the geographic detail that matters more than anything else in this story. You cannot drive to Lake Iliamna. There are no roads connecting it to the Alaskan highway system. The only practical way to access the lake is by float plane or small boat from a coastal town. That isolation has a consequence. It means that whatever lives in that lake has been doing so largely undisturbed by human activity for a very long time. The lake drains through the Kvichak River into Bristol Bay, which opens into the Pacific Ocean. That connection, a navigable, documented waterway between the Pacific and the lake, is not a footnote. It is, as we will see, the entire hinge on which the most plausible scientific theory turns. And every summer, the Kvichak River corridor hosts one of the largest sockeye salmon runs on Earth. Anywhere between 5 and 8 million adult sockeye salmon return through that system annually on their way to spawning grounds. 5 to 8 million fish. That is one of the greatest concentrations of prey biomass anywhere in North American freshwater. If you were a large, predatory animal looking for a dining room, Lake Iliamna would be your first choice. The lake is also home to a documented, isolated, freshwater population of harbor seals, a population that geneticists believe moved into the lake from the ocean long ago and has been resident ever since. The number of seals in the population is estimated at around 400 individuals. Harbor seals are, in the ocean, a documented prey item for several large shark species. Their presence in this lake is, again, not a footnote. So, a vast, deep, largely inaccessible lake connected to the Pacific Ocean, hosting millions of salmon and 400 marine mammals, and at the bottom of it all, nearly 1,000 feet of cold, dark, unexplored water. Now, we can talk about what people say is living there. But before we get to the pilots and the scientists, we need to talk about the people who were warning about this thing before any of them ever arrived. And what they said has turned out to be more accurate than anyone gave them credit for. The ancient receipts. Here is the part of this story that consistently gets either over-romanticized or quietly skipped. And I think both approaches are mistakes, because when you read it carefully, it's genuinely striking. The indigenous peoples of the Lake Iliamna region, primarily Yupik, Dena'ina, Athabaskan, and Aleut communities, have oral traditions that include accounts of large, dangerous creatures in the lake. These traditions predate any modern European or American contact with the region and were documented by early 20th century researchers and ethnographers. Among Aleut communities, stories circulated of large fish-like creatures in the waters of the region, creatures described as aggressive, capable of capsizing small watercraft, and dangerous enough to warrant avoidance of certain areas. These accounts were consistent enough across communities that they appear to represent a shared oral record rather than isolated storytelling. The Tlingit people, whose territory spans coastal Alaska and British Columbia, do have a documented mythological figure called the Gunakadet, sometimes rendered as Gunakadet, which appears in their art and oral tradition as a powerful sea creature, often described as wolf-headed with a whale or fish body. This figure is well documented in Tlingit culture. However, it is important to be clear. The Gunakadet is a broad cultural figure, not exclusively or specifically tied to Lake Iliamna. Cultural figure, not exclusively or specifically tied to Lake Iliamna. Drawing a straight line from the Gunakadet to a creature in one particular lake would overstate what the material actually says. What is documented more specifically to the Iliamna region is this. Multiple indigenous communities in the area historically treated the lake with a degree of caution that researchers have interpreted as consistent with the belief that dangerous large animals were present. The name Iliamna itself has been linked by some regional historians to a Dena'ina word referencing a large mythical fish in the lake, though the etymology is not uniformly agreed upon by linguists. So what do we take from this? Not that folklore equals evidence of a biological creature, but that multiple independent communities living around this lake across centuries developed consistent oral traditions warning about something large and dangerous in the water, and that when modern witnesses started reporting something large and dangerous in the water, they were, unknowingly, reaching the same conclusion that generations of people before them had already reached. That pattern is worth paying attention to. The oral traditions went largely unnoticed by the outside world for a long time. But then, in the 1940s, bush pilots started flying over this lake, and what they saw from their cockpits forced the conversation into the open for the first time. The pilots who saw it first. The arrival of aviation in rural Alaska during the 1940s had an unexpected consequence for Lake Iliamna. It gave people a vantage point from which to see the entire surface of the water at once. And once pilots started flying regular routes over the lake, the reports began to accumulate. The most widely cited early account comes from 1942. Bush pilot Babe Allsworth and passenger Bill Hammersley were flying over the lake when Allsworth spotted large shapes in the water near one of the lake's small islands. He circled for a closer look. Both men described seeing multiple large, dull, aluminum-colored fish with broad, blunt heads and long, tapered bodies. The detail that Allsworth specifically noted, and that has been quoted consistently in every subsequent account, was that the tails moved side to side, not up and down. That directional tail movement is worth pausing on. It is not a cryptid detail. It is a biology detail. Cetaceans, whales, dolphins, porpoises move their tails vertically. Fish move their tails horizontally. Allsworth, a seasoned bush pilot with no stated zoological agenda, described a horizontal tail movement in 1942. That specific observation has been treated by later researchers as one of the most useful data points in the entire file. By the late 1950s, aerial sightings from multiple independent pilots had accumulated. Several described similar animals, large, dark gray to metallic in coloration, moving at depths visible from low-altitude flight over the lake on calm, clear days. In a 1988 Alaska Magazine article, an unnamed state wildlife biologist recounted a solo flight during which he observed a creature he estimated at between 25 and 30 feet in length. According to his account, he watched it for approximately 10 minutes without it surfacing to breathe, which is consistent with a fish, as fish breathe through gills rather than surfacing for air, unlike marine mammals. Tim Laporte, owner of Iliamna Air Taxi, reported a July 1977 sighting in which he and passengers observed a large fish-like creature near a skiff, which he used to roughly estimate its length at about 15 feet. He described it as arching its back, striking the water, and then showing a large tail, moving side to side as it dove. Now, to be clear, these are eyewitness accounts from credible individuals. They are not peer-reviewed data. They cannot be independently verified. But the consistency of specific details, horizontal tail movement, dull gray coloration, large blunt head across multiple independent witnesses across several decades, is what makes this file more interesting than a single monster sighting at a lake. So by the late 70s, this is no longer a rumor. It's a pattern. Named witnesses, consistent descriptions, and the Alaskan press decided to test it with a very large amount of money. The $100,000 Secret. In 1979, the Anchorage Daily News, Alaska's largest and most prominent newspaper, offered a reward of $100,000. The reward was for documented, scientifically verifiable proof of an unknown species living in Lake Iliamna. To be specific, the prize required tangible evidence confirmed by scientists that the creature was a species genuinely unknown to science. $100,000 in 1979 is the equivalent of over $400,000 today. The Anchorage Daily News was not a tabloid. This was a legitimate mainstream journalistic institution putting up serious money on a story it considered worth taking seriously. The reward went unclaimed. No specimen, no carcass, no confirmed photographic evidence meeting the scientific threshold was produced during the reward period. What the reward did produce was a period of intensified public interest in the lake. Researchers arrived, fishing expeditions were mounted, camera equipment was deployed, various attempts to document or attract the creature were made, including, in one of the more memorably unhinged episodes, reportedly playing classical music over the water in an attempt to draw something to the surface. This did not work, for reasons that should perhaps not require explanation. Now, here is the important editorial note about this chapter of the story. The reward was specifically structured around the discovery of an unknown species. The creature in Lake Iliamna may not be an unknown species at all. The leading scientific hypothesis, as we will discuss, involves a known animal that has simply never been confirmed in this specific lake. That is a crucial distinction. The reward was not for proving the creature exists, it was for proving it is something new to science. That's a much higher bar, and it's still unclaimed. What the Anchorage Daily News reward tells us is not that the creature is a hoax. It tells us that proving a specific animal's presence in a remote, deep, inaccessible lake to a standard rigorous enough to satisfy scientists is extraordinarily hard, even with $100,000 on the table. And then the money went away. But the sightings didn't. They kept coming, and the people doing the reporting were exactly the kind of witnesses that make scientists pay attention. The witnesses science couldn't ignore. Let's talk about who has been seeing this thing, because the roster of witnesses is, frankly, not easy to dismiss. In the summer of 2008, Robin Levine, described in subsequent reporting as an Anchorage-based anthropologist, was traveling in a water taxi over the lake on a calm, clear day. She reported seeing a large, grayish, fish-like creature approximately 15 feet in length in shallow water. She described it as having a long head, prominent tail, and visible fins. She reportedly compared it initially to two seals twisted together, then concluded it was a single animal. Her professional background made her account notable. She was not a recreational tourist, and she was specific about what she ruled out. Perhaps the most dramatic account in the modern record involves a group of moose hunters on the lake whose exact identities have not been publicly disclosed, but whose story was collected and published by marine ecologist Bruce Wright. According to Wright's account, published in his book on the subject, the hunters were watching a family of swans from their skiff when the swans began disappearing beneath the surface of the lake one by one. What the hunters had initially interpreted as submerged logs then revealed itself to be living creatures feeding. Wright describes one of the creatures as estimated to be the length and width of their 18-foot skiff, with eyes the diameter of soccer balls. It is important to be transparent here. This account is secondhand, passed from unnamed witnesses to Wright, then published by him. It is not a recorded statement, a signed affidavit, or a peer-reviewed report. It is an anecdote collected by a credible researcher from unnamed sources. It's compelling. It's also not independently verifiable. A 1959 Sports Afield magazine account described fishing attempts for the creature during which heavy tackle was reportedly destroyed, including references to very strong line being severed or lost. Like most accounts of this vintage, the magazine-style reporting of 1959 does not represent an engineering failure analysis. It is a reported account, not a lab-tested proof. Worth noting, not worth treating as hard physical evidence. The honest summary of this section is this: there is a substantial and consistent body of eyewitness testimony stretching across 8 decades, from named, credible individuals describing large animals in Lake Iliamna that do not match any fish species currently confirmed in the lake. Eyewitness testimony is not proof, but eyewitness testimony from a wide range of independent, credible people describing the same general phenomenon is a reason to take something seriously. Science took it seriously enough to send in a researcher. And what happened next is where this story genuinely escalates. Because when a retired military colonel with 2 wildlife biology degrees starts setting industrial longlines in the lake, and something destroys his gear in a way he cannot explain, this stops being a witness problem and starts being a physics problem. The gear that got destroyed. Mark Stegar is a retired colonel from the Alaska Army National Guard, where he served as Chief Aviation Officer. He has 2 degrees in wildlife biology. He has owned a summer cabin on Lake Iliamna for years and has fished the lake extensively. He is, by anyone's reasonable assessment, not a person who jumps to dramatic conclusions. Beginning in the 2010s, Stegar began setting long lines in the lake, the same heavy-duty gear commercially used for halibut and other large deep-water fish. He baited them with salmon heads and let them sit, partly out of curiosity, partly because he wanted to see what the lake was actually holding. For several summers, nothing unusual occurred. Then, in 2017, he went to retrieve his line and found it in a state he could not account for. His 38-pound anchor had been dragged approximately 50 yards across the lake bottom. The line was running in the opposite direction from its original set. The gagnons, short leaders that connect individual hooks to the main line, were gone. 4-inch stainless steel snaps were bent in multiple directions. The braided nylon cord was shredded. To understand what this means practically, longline gear of this specification is designed to restrain halibut well over 300 pounds. A 38-pound anchor does not get dragged 50 yards by currents or by a modest-sized fish. Whatever interacted with this gear had substantial physical force. Stegar's own response to what he found is the detail that researchers have quoted most. He reportedly said, "This could be the oldest creature on the planet. I'm not going to try to catch it anymore." He coiled up the gear and stopped setting it. Bruce Wright, a senior scientist and marine ecologist with a background in apex predator research, did investigate Iliamna over several years. He is a real, named, credentialed researcher, and his involvement is verifiable. He designed an underwater camera system baited with sockeye salmon carcasses and deployed it in the lake beginning in 2019. In 2020, something large interacted with the camera housing, damaging part of its metal structure. The camera's battery had run out just before the encounter occurred, and no footage was captured. Wright has discussed this publicly. Wright has stated publicly that he was skeptical when he began his investigation, and that his skepticism decreased significantly over the course of his research. He is on record saying that every person he spoke to who had spent time on the lake had either seen the creature themselves or knew someone who had. That quote matters, not because it's proof, but because Bruce Wright is not a cryptozoology enthusiast. He's an apex predator researcher. When a person like that says his skepticism has decreased, that's a data point worth registering. So we have the destroyed gear, we have the credentialed researcher who changed his mind. And now we need to talk about what science actually thinks is in that lake. Because the lineup of suspects is short, the evidence points hard in one direction, and that direction is deeply unsettling. The suspects lineup. Science has produced 3 serious biological candidates for what might be in Lake Iliamna. Let's be rigorous about what supports each one and what rules them out. The white sturgeon. The white sturgeon is the largest freshwater fish in North America. Confirmed maximum size, up to 20 feet in length and over 1,000 pounds in weight. It is a long-lived species, documented at over 100 years old. Its coloring, gray to brownish gray, and its body shape, long, cylindrical, with a broad, blunt head, match the general physical descriptions given by Iliamna witnesses almost perfectly. White sturgeon are bottom dwellers. They spend most of their time on or near the lake floor, which would explain their rarity at the surface. They are known to enter brackish and occasionally salt water, and they have been documented in river systems connected to the Gulf of Alaska region. The problem? There is currently no confirmed population of white sturgeon documented in Lake Iliamna. Some green sturgeon have been recorded in nearby coastal waters, and the connected river systems theoretically allow passage, but confirmed presence in the lake itself has not been established in the scientific literature. The sturgeon theory is plausible. It is not confirmed. The giant northern pike. Northern pike are a confirmed Alaskan species. They are torpedo-shaped ambush predators. They are known to feed on waterfowl, including ducks, by approaching from below and pulling them underwater. That is not a legend. That is documented pike behavior. Bruce Wright, after years of investigation, has publicly stated that giant northern pike are his own best working hypothesis for the Iliamna creature. His reasoning includes the feeding behavior described by witnesses, ambush-style predation, attacking from below, which is consistent with pike tactics. Pike in Alaska do reach substantial sizes, but here is the honest constraint. The largest confirmed northern pike anywhere in the world do not approach the 20 to 30-foot estimates given by some Iliamna witnesses. Northern pike records top out far short of that. Either the size estimates are significant overestimates, which is possible given the difficulty of judging underwater size from a boat or low-flying aircraft, or pike are not the full answer. The pike theory has a credentialed scientific proponent. It also has a documented size ceiling problem. The Pacific sleeper shark. This is the hypothesis that has attracted the most attention, and the one that is, if correct, by far the most dramatic answer. The Pacific sleeper shark is a confirmed species in the North Pacific, documented maximum size, upwards of 20 feet in length, with potential weight exceeding 4 tons. Its coloring, dark gray to brownish gray, described by some sources as dull or matte, is consistent with witness accounts. Its body shape, long, tapered, heavy, is consistent, and its tail, like all sharks, moves horizontally, side to side, exactly as Babe Allsworth described in 1942. Pacific sleeper sharks are documented, confirmed predators of marine mammals in the ocean. Harbor seals, sea otters, and other species have been found in their stomachs in studies of Pacific sleeper shark diet. That is a confirmed fact about the species in its ocean habitat. The geographic pathway exists. The Kvichak River connects Lake Iliamna to Bristol Bay and the Pacific Ocean. Pacific sleeper sharks have been documented in shallow coastal waters and have close relatives, Greenland sharks, that are known to enter brackish and low salinity environments. Here is what is not confirmed. There is no verified specimen, no tissue sample, no underwater footage, and no peer-reviewed study confirming that Pacific sleeper sharks are present. No underwater footage and no peer-reviewed study confirming that Pacific sleeper sharks are present in Lake Iliamna. The hypothesis is coherent and supported by circumstantial evidence, but it remains a hypothesis. And importantly, even if sleeper sharks did enter the lake following salmon runs, the claim that they are feeding on seals inside the lake specifically is anecdotal. The accounts of large creatures appearing to herd seals in the lake are eyewitness reports, not documented predation events with confirmed species identification. It's a reasonable inference. It is not a confirmed fact. So we have 3 candidates: one unconfirmed in the lake, one with a size problem, and one that is biologically capable of being everything witnesses describe, but has never been physically confirmed there. And here is the part where being honest about the uncertainty makes this story scarier, not less scary, because what the sleeper shark hypothesis implies, if it's right, is extraordinary. Why? The uncertainty is the terrifying part. Let's talk about what we actually know, confirmed, verified, peer-reviewed, about the Pacific sleeper shark. And then let's talk about why the fact that we can't confirm it's in Lake Iliamna might be more unsettling than if we could. Pacific sleeper sharks belong to the family Somniosidae, the sleeper sharks, which includes the Greenland shark. In 2016, a landmark study published in the journal Science used carbon-14 dating of the eye lenses of Greenland sharks to determine their ages. The study, led by Julius Nielsen of the University of Copenhagen, found that Greenland sharks reach sexual maturity at approximately 150 years of age, and that the oldest individual in the sample was estimated at roughly 400 years old, with an uncertainty range that extended to approximately 500 years. These are the longest confirmed lifespans of any vertebrate animal on Earth. Pacific sleeper sharks share the deep water, cold water, slow metabolic biology of the Greenland shark. While no equivalent longevity study has been conducted on Pacific sleeper sharks, and certainly not on any Iliamna specimen, since no confirmed Iliamna specimen exists, the biological parallels between the two species suggest that Pacific sleeper sharks may also be exceptionally long-lived. This is a reasonable scientific inference. It is not confirmed. So when Mark Steigar said, "This could be the oldest creature on the planet," he was not being dramatic for the camera. He was making a biologically coherent observation based on what we know about related species. He was speculating, but informed speculation from a man with 2 wildlife biology degrees is not nothing. Here is another confirmed fact about Pacific sleeper sharks that is relevant. They are among the most hydrodynamically quiet, large animals in the ocean. They move with almost no body undulation in the water column, gliding more than swimming, especially at depth. In laboratory and field observations, they have been documented approaching prey with minimal disturbance to the surrounding water. They are, functionally, an apex predator that produces almost no advance warning of its presence. Now, put that in context. An animal that can exceed 20 feet, that can weigh 4 tons, that moves in near silence, that has documented capacity in the ocean to prey on marine mammals, that potentially lives for centuries, that has a direct geographic pathway into a deep, isolated Alaskan lake loaded with salmon and harbor seals. And that has left, if the hypothesis is correct, decades of shredded gear, eyewitness encounters, and one very bent underwater camera housing in its wake. And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Even if every element of the sleeper shark hypothesis is correct, we might never be able to prove it. Lake Iliamna is nearly 1,000 feet deep. It has limited human access. Its waters are cold and, in many places, low visibility. If a population of large, bottom-oriented, hydrodynamically silent sharks were living in those depths, surfacing occasionally to follow salmon into the shallows, occasionally interacting with fishing gear, occasionally being spotted by pilots and fishermen, they would have every natural advantage needed to remain unconfirmed indefinitely. The $100,000 reward sat unclaimed for years. The best-funded camera effort had its battery run out at exactly the wrong moment. Environmental DNA sampling has been conducted but has not yet produced a peer-reviewed confirmation of any unexpected large species. And every summer, 5 to 8 million salmon pour into the lake, and whatever is in there feeds, and the water closes over the surface, and the lake goes dark again. The mystery of Lake Iliamna is not unsolved because nobody has looked. It is unsolved because the lake itself, in its scale and depth and remoteness, may simply be better at keeping secrets than we are at finding them. And if that doesn't keep you up at night, I'm not sure what will. So where does this leave us? The science is still open. The lake is still out there. And the investigation, quietly, methodically, continues. Here's where we actually are. Lake Iliamna is real. The salmon runs are real. The freshwater seals are real. The ocean connection is real. The eyewitnesses? Also real. Named people, documented by actual researchers. The destroyed fishing gear is real. Even Bruce Wright changing his mind? Very real. What's not real, at least scientifically, is confirmation. No specimen, no body, no clear footage, no peer-reviewed eDNA result proving a species that shouldn't be there. The mystery isn't solved, and that's not a failure. That's just the truth. And honestly, that's what makes this whole thing so wild. Not that there's some movie monster lurking in the water, but that there could be a known animal behaving in a way that would rewrite what we understand about freshwater predators in North America. And we still can't prove it. Not because it's impossible, but because the lake is massive, deep, and completely unbothered by our need for answers. Indigenous communities warned about these waters long before any of this became a mystery. Pilots have seen something from above. Fishermen have lost gear to something they couldn't fight or even see. A marine ecologist went in skeptical and came out not so skeptical. And whatever is in that lake, oversized fish, rogue predator, or something we haven't properly identified yet, it has stayed hidden. So yeah, if you want to keep up with this investigation, subscribe, share, and tell me which suspect you believe. I'll be in the replies. Still side-eyeing that lake.